Light one candle, the Maccabee children, with thanks their light didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. Light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears.
Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering pain we learned so long ago.
Light one candle for all we believe in, let anger not tear us apart. And light one candle to bind us together, peace as the song in our hearts. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears.
What is the memory that's valued so highly? We keep it alive in the flame. What's the commitment for those who have died? We cry out they've not died in vain.
We have come this far, always believing that judgment will somehow prevail. This is the burden, this is the promise, and this is why we will not fail. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. Don't let the light go out, don't let the light go out. Don't let the light go out, don't let the light go out.
Each Candle a Miracle by Amanda Eudice Kessler. We light the Hanukkah candles in wonder, joy, and gratitude. Each candle a miracle. When the Holy Temple was rededicated at the time of the Maccabean liberation battle, only 1 day's worth of oil remained, yet it burned for 8 days, so we light candles in remembrance. We rededicate ourselves to the miracle of light in a season of darkness, in the miracle of trust in a time of anxiety, to the miracle of hope in a time of despair, to the miracle of faith in a time of cynicism. We rededicate ourselves to the miracle of wholeness in a time of fracture, to the miracle of courage in a time of fear, to the miracle of resistance in a time of oppression, to the miracle of peace in a time of violence, and in a time of hatred, we rededicate ourselves to the miracle of love.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our great covenant.
My daughter, who is a cantor at a Jewish synagogue in Springfield, Massachusetts, tells me that this is the primary Hanukkah hymn. It's number 215 in our UU hymnal, and we're going to sing 2 verses. Please read and sing along with us.
Praise to the living God, all praised be the name, which was and is to be for aye the same. The one eternal God, ere aught that now appears, the first, the last, beyond all thought or timeless years. The Spirit floweth free, I surging where it will. In prophets' word did speak of old and speaketh still. The Torah rests secure, and changeless it shall stand, deep writ upon the human heart on sea and land.
The story I have to share with you today is an adaptation of a story called The Miracle Jar by Audrey Penn, and it begins with a kid named Sophie on the day that will become the first night of Hanukkah. And Sophie was really excited, and she asked her mother when they would light their candles. And their mother said, just as soon as the sun goes down, just like every year. And it was hard for Sophie and her little brother Reuben to wait. Have you ever had something that you were really excited about, that you were waiting for, and it was hard to wait? I wonder if any of us might be feeling that way right now. But finally it was time. Time for the candles, and especially time for the first of the special holiday treats that their mother always made for each night of Hanukkah. But then their mom said, you know, if we're going to have my holiday treats, we're going to need an 8-day miracle, just like the first Hanukkah miracle. And Reuben asked, the first Hanukkah miracle? And then their dad said, the miracle your mother is talking about has to do with the sacred oil that stays lit above the Torahs in our temple. You see, in ancient times, when Judah the Maccabee and his followers reclaimed their temple from the Syrian king, they cleaned it and prepared it for rededication. And the word Hanukkah means rededication. But when the sacred temple menorah was relit, there was only enough oil to burn for 1 day. And it's supposed to remain lit at all times and never go out. But back then, it took 8 days to make a new supply of sacred oil, which meant there wouldn't be enough oil to keep the menorah lit while more was prepared. But then, an amazing thing happened. And Reuben asked, what? And their father replied, a miracle. That single day's worth of sacred oil lasted 8 whole days and nights, enough to keep the menorah lit until more purified oil was ready. And that's why we light 8 candles for Hanukkah. It's to celebrate the miracle, and the shamash represents that tiny bit of oil that stayed lit. And so Sophie asked her mom, oh, are you going to make a supply of oil? Is that the miracle? Is that going to be your Hanukkah gift? And their mother said, no, But I am kind of hoping for a similar miracle because there's only a little bit of cooking oil left in our jar. And we need oil to make all 8 of our holiday treats, and I'm not sure there's enough to last all 8 nights of Hanukkah. She went to their pantry and pulled out their jar and showed it to everyone. She said, the jar is almost empty and there's way too much snow on the ground to go out to the store and get more. They lived in an area where there was a lot of snow and there had been a storm recently. And so she said, we must make do with what we have and stay safe at home. We might be able to relate to that a little bit, huh? But Sophie then had an idea, and she clapped her hands and said excitedly, oh, that will be our family gift then. We will make the oil last all 8 nights of Hanukkah. We'll make our own miracle. And their dad agreed that that was a wonderful idea, so he found a new jar to use, and he wrote Miracle Jar on it. And then they carefully transferred all of the oil they had to the miracle jar. And their dad said, let's see if the miracle jar will surprise us, like the sacred oil surprised Judah the Maccabee. So that night, when the sun went down, their father stood before the brass menorah and sang a prayer. And then he took a small stick from the fireplace and lit the shamash, and then Sophie and Reuben held it together to light the first Hanukkah candle. And then we returned the shamash to its place in the menorah and welcomed Hanukkah with a song. And then their mother announced, well, I suppose it's time for our first miracle gift. And she took the kids with her to the kitchen where they all worked together to peel and grate 3 large baking potatoes. You might be able to guess, some of you, what they're having. And then their mother opened the miracle jar and poured some of the oil into their skillet. And when the oil was nice and hot, she poured the potato batter into 4 little pancakes. And when they were ready, they enjoyed their latkes very much and agreed that they were a perfect first night treat. And then, when the oil in the pan had cooled, Sophie's mother poured it back into the special jar to be used for the remaining treats. On the second night of Hanukkah, Sophie and Reuben lit the shamash and 2 candles, and then they had special jelly-filled donuts. Night 3 brought fried corn fritters. Night 4 was Sophie's very favorite treat, crispy, crunchy fried potato sticks. And then the 5th night of Hanukkah was fried bread and powdered sugar. The 6th, they had apples that had sizzled and softened in the oil-coated pan, but Sophie could see that the oil in the miracle jar was dwindling. And she wondered if all 8 nights would bring gifts. On the 7th night, they lit their candles and sang their songs, and then their mother said, I can't believe it's already the 7th night, but I'm not sure we're going to have our special miracle. She opened the miracle jar and turned it upside down over the skillet, and the last drops of oil dripped in and danced across the hot surface. And then Sophie and Reuben sprinkled peanuts onto the oil, and then they laughed as the peanuts popped and twirled and turned a crisp, crunchy brown for their 7th night treat. But there was no oil left to pour back into the jar. Sophie was really disappointed. She said, I guess we can't make our last holiday treat. But when the last night of Hanukkah began, and the shamash and the 8 holiday candles were lit, it was hard to feel sad in the glow of their shimmering menorah. And Sophie said, maybe next year we could have another miracle jar, and then we can have 8 miracles instead of just 7. But then, their mother led the family into the kitchen where she reached up and took out the empty miracle jar and got a small piece of cheesecloth, stuffed it into the jar, and wiped the jar's oil-coated sides, and then took the cloth and spread the oil on the bottom of the pan. There was just enough oil to coat the skillet. And so, while their mother made a large fried pancake in the pan, Sophie and Reuben and their dad created a mash with apples and honey. And then once it was all ready, their mother spread the mash onto the pancake, then rolled it up and cut it into 4 equal parts. So everyone got a piece of the 8th miracle treat. And Sophie was really excited. She said to her mom, you did it! You made a real Hanukkah miracle. You made the oil last all 8 nights, just like the oil in the temple. And then their dad said, now maybe we know how surprised everyone must have felt on that very first Hanukkah. Isn't it nice to know that some of the nicest gifts are the ones that surprise us the most? And Sophie and Reuben watched as the shamash and the last of the 8 candles melted away. Happy Hanukkah, Sophie told her family when the last of the flickering flames went out.
Each night we light one more, by Rabbi Richard Jacobs. Some historians of religion have taught that Hanukkah is another ancient celebration of the winter solstice. However, the winter solstice can occur with the full moon, yielding a bright moonlit night. Hanukkah is different. Hanukkah, too, occurs near the winter solstice, when the nights are the longest. But it also begins on the 25th day of the lunar month and ends at the end of the new moon, a sliver of light. With each night of Hanukkah, with the waning of the moon, the nights get darker and darker. And as the darkness descends with each progressive night, we light one more candle against the darkness. Second reading by Rami M. Shapiro. We kindle this light. We kindle this light in honor of hope. May we never lose heart in our quest for justice. We kindle this light in honor of action. May we never mistake wishing for doing. We kindle this light in honor of nature. May our eyes never dim to her wonders, nor our ears grow deaf to her cries of pain. We kindle this light in honor of unity. May we celebrate our differences and yet have the courage to see beyond them. And we kindle this light in honor of knowledge. May we free ourselves from opinion that we may open ourselves to truth. We kindle this light in honor of kindness. May we cultivate the compassion in thought, word, and deed. We kindle this light in honor of heroism. May we never surrender to tyranny, no matter how dear we hold the tyrant. Every day gets a little darker, every night longer, and every time we're dealing each day with COVID, with Christmas, with holidays that don't seem the same, the fear of shopping, the fear of online receiving packages, fear seems to permeate everything. So I would ask you to join with me every morning and say, joy. Joy that I can see this day as a new battle of kindness, of love, of understanding, and hope. We have people in our congregation who are healing, and so send some joy and light their way. We have people in our congregation who are sad, depressed, withdrawn, and feeling alienated. Let us open our hearts and send thoughts, prayers, and the light of who we are out to them, so that maybe that little spark will have them call and reach out. I remind you that we have members who need meals. Check it out. Take a casserole. Take soup. And I want to thank everyone who has done so. And finally, I want to remind you that you may have a winter coat, but someone may not. We have coupons for winter coats, so if you know someone, anyone who needs one, contact me and I will be happy to make it a coat happen for someone. And finally, I would ask that you join me in a brief prayer. As I sit surrounded by candlelight, I remember and reminded of everybody's light that I see, that I talk to, who I just briefly mentally connect to, that their light is glowing and flowing, and that I hope the light inside of me will touch the light inside of you, so that you know and I know we're in this together, COVID and all, despair and all, fear and all, darkness and all, because we light a candle to push away the darkness in both our hearts, our soul, and the world. Amen.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart. And it's telling me I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. One more time. There's a river flowing in my soul. My soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today at TVUUC. My name is Claudia Presley, and I'm the Director of Administration here. Today is a Share the Plate Sunday. What that means is that any contribution that comes in that is not marked as a pledge will go to today's organization and the general operating fund of TVUUC. So it will be split between those two things. The organization today is the TVUUC Refugee Fund that works with the Bridge Refugee Services. You'll be seeing a short video here in just a few minutes that tells you about Bridge, but let me tell you about what TVUUC does with Bridge. We have one family that we have worked with for the last couple of years. They are from the Congo. The mother in that family has recently had a stroke, so we have worked with them to help them be able to move into an apartment, to help with medical bills, and to also help with school supplies for the children. So any contribution that you give today would greatly benefit that family. Please give generously. Thanks for joining us today. The way you can give is to go to tvuuc.org/give, or you can text give to the number 73256, type in TVUUC, and then the amount that you would like to give. Thanks again for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
So when I came to America, I couldn't speak or read English. Okay, I was in Kenya for 2.5 years. I didn't go to school there. I was just a street kid who was just living a street life, waiting to come to America. And then I came here and I realized that things were different from where I just came from. And I was like, okay, man, I think here I can actually be anything I want to be.
The cultural shock, it's something every refugee faces when they get here. Imagine you have lived in a camp. This is your first time to live in a house. You never had water in the house, electricity, oven, and things. And seeing all the things, even if you have needed help from case management, it can be scary.
Having been at Bridge for 8 years and seen literally hundreds of clients come to Knoxville, I think it's just something that it's the right thing to do as somebody who's a humanitarian, but it's also something that clearly benefits the community. We have employers constantly calling our employment specialists looking for people to fill open positions. We see kids make great strides academically and learn English really quickly. We see clients become citizens. Everyone that we resettle is a taxpayer. So there are really big benefits to the community, just other than it being the appropriate thing for us to do as a country. It's upsetting to see a really vulnerable group of people to be scapegoated, I think, for a lot of things. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of politics of fear that's going on in this country, and it's fear that's not based on anything real.
So within 4 to 6 months, they are able to be employed and to sustain their families, to be self-sufficient, and that can be a good economic model for low income and other marginalized communities.
It's hugely important for refugee resettlement to continue in the state of Tennessee. I think that it's in a time of historic displacement of people worldwide, over 70 million people displaced because of persecution and violence. We have an obligation as a country to do our fair share.
It can happen. We can find sustainable donors and supporters who understand why refugees are here, who understand and want to keep that culture of welcoming the stranger and the refugees to thrive. And I hope that one day it will happen.
אלוהי נצור לא שונים מידע ושפתי מדבר מימה אבל קל אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי גאווה לכל תהיה אלוהי נצור לא שונים מידע ושפתי מדבר מימה אבל קל אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי גאווה לכל תהיה אלוהי נצור לשני מרע ושפתי מדבר מימה אבל קל אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לקותי אלוהי אלוהי פתח ליבי
ושפתיים מדבר מרמה ולמקל אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי 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 נצור לשוני מרע ושפתיים מדבר מרמה ולמקל אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי אלוהי יהיו לרצון ממרפי והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני
The title for today's sermon is Chutzpah for Hanukkah. And I know what you might be thinking. Why would I choose a title that had two words that begin with the letter C, but the letter C isn't pronounced in either word? Why would I do such a thing? Well, here's the reason. I've got chutzpah. So what is a definition of the word chutzpah? Chutzpah is a Yiddish word that comes from the Hebrew language, and it means shameless audacity. Shameless audacity. It's a word that can be heard in either a positive or a negative way. Synonyms for chutzpah include impertinence, impudence, cheekiness, insubordination, boldness, brazenness. But if you're no fan of chutzpah, then it can mean rude, impolite, disrespectful, ill-mannered, or discourteous. So that's one way of looking at it. But to people who have a favorable view of chutzpah, it can mean courage and bravery and the willingness to take a risk. There's a story in the book of Genesis about Abraham that shows that Abraham was a man with chutzpah. The story goes that God appeared before Abraham and said, I am going to destroy the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham said, if there are 50 good people in the city, will you destroy the good with the bad, the righteous with the wicked? Surely you're God and you will do the right thing. And God said, for the sake of 50 people, I will spare the city. But Abraham kept asking questions. He said, well, what if there are 45 good people in the city? Will you destroy the city then? That's only 5 less than 50. And God said, if there are 45 good people, I will spare the city. And so Abraham asked another question. He said, well, what if there are 40 good people? Will you destroy the city? Would that be the right thing to do? And God says, for the sake of 40 people, I will not destroy the city. But Abraham kept going. Well, what if there are 30 people? There are 30 good people in that city. Will you destroy the city? Well, if there are 30 good people, I won't destroy the city, said God. What if there's 20 good people? Well, for 20 good people, I won't destroy the city. What if there are 10 good people? Well, I won't destroy the city if there are 10 good people. But that's the end of the story. Abraham is unable to bargain any further. And one of the reasons may be that in the Jewish tradition, 10 people is a minyan. It's the minimum number of people needed to have worship together. And so the meaning of the story seems to be, as long as there are 10 good people, as long as there's a minyan, then there is hope for a city. There is hope for the city. But I don't know about you. I think it takes chutzpah to question God. And Abraham definitely had it. Now, I think it's significant that Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, three of the big Western world religions, all trace themselves back to Abraham. They're called the Abrahamic faiths. And the spiritual genealogy all go back to this one man with chutzpah. So why would the three major religions in the West, the three Abrahamic faiths, why would they trace their origins back to Abraham? I think it's because we all need chutzpah. We need chutzpah in order to live. There was a young anonymous poet who put it this way. She wrote, "We are but a fraction of what is alive. We are but one species that thrives. More species have been than we have ever known. More galaxies than we can ever call home. I am but one of billions, but I have the audacity to think I matter. I have the audacity to think that anyone truly cares. I have the audacity to think I am worth the space I take. I am worth the food I eat. The audacity to live." It takes audacity to live. It especially takes audacity to live in the middle of a global pandemic. It takes audacity to get out of bed in the morning. It takes audacity to keep on keeping on in this season when the nights are getting longer and the days are growing shorter. It takes audacity to live in this time of social isolation and loneliness and seasonal affective disorder or seasonal depression and anxiety. It takes audacity to say, I am worth the food I eat. I am worth a living wage. I am worth the health care I need. I am worth much. It takes audacity to live. It takes chutzpah. The story of Hanukkah is the story of a small band of people who challenged a mighty empire. The Hebrew people, the Maccabee children, rising up in rebellion against their Hellenistic conquerors, led by King Antiochus. In the year 2020, we have seen a lot of monuments toppled. We've seen a lot of statues torn down. But in the year 166 BCE, the statue that the Maccabee children toppled down was a statue of Zeus that King Antiochus had placed in the temple in Jerusalem, an affront to the Jewish faith. Now, the Maccabees were outnumbered, undersupplied, and in over their heads. Nevertheless, they persisted. And tradition tells us that once they cleansed the temple, they found a lamp that only had enough oil for one night, and yet that lamp stayed lit for 8 nights. A Hanukkah miracle. And we hear miracle stories like this in many other traditions. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. We hear miracle stories that if the proverb tells us fortune favors the bold, then there are many miracle stories that tell us the Spirit aligns with those with Chutzpah. The last time I was in Boston for a meeting of the Unitarian Universalist Association Board of Trustees, I took some time off to go on a tour of the Boston Tea Party Museum. So I thought I would share some pictures of that with you today. I took the tour, which involved listening to men in tri-cornered hats and women in bonnets telling us the story of the Boston Tea Party. We got to attend a contentious town meeting where colonists expressed their anger over British tyranny. We got to board recreations of the ships, go below deck, and see where the sailors slept and where the tea was stored. You may not know this, but the original Boston Tea Party happened on December 16th, 1773. And this year, December 16, falls during the time of Hanukkah. Just as the Maccabees rebelled against their oppressors, early American revolutionaries rebelled against the British government. Of course, today, tourists can reenact the revolutionary acts of looting and vandalism in a family-friendly atmosphere. As a matter of fact, I've kind of got the feeling that it was a place where white people took their children to learn about looting and vandalism. Children can throw crates of tea into the harbor in a fun and safe environment. But in 1773, this was a dangerous and disruptive and rebellious action, causing an estimated $1,700,000 worth of damage. The year 2020 has been a year with a lot of looting and vandalism. Some have found these actions ominous and threatening. However, in the future, there may be family-friendly museums that allow us to reenact moments in the history of the Black Lives Matter movement, or the Parkland Kids School walkout, or other moments for social change that employed the politics of disruption. Maybe actions in the present that some have labeled as rude and disrespectful will be seen in the future as brave and courageous. The suffragists and many other social change organizations have adapted a slogan from the American Revolution. They have said, "Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God." And as one historian said, "Well-behaved women rarely make history." And the same can be said of people of every gender identity across the spectrum. If you want to change the world, you'd better have chutzpah. The suffragist Susan B. Anthony said, "We need to have lives that are animated by a divine discontent, or we might say a sacred dissatisfaction." Many of the spiritualities that are popular are ones that trade inner peace at the expense of outward actions for justice, seeking inner calm at the expense of justified, righteous indignation. But the truth is, it's possible to feel inner calm in the midst of outward storms. It's possible to feel inner peace in the midst of outward chaos. President Barack Obama once wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope. And he took that title from a sermon that he heard preached by the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, his minister at the time, who proved to be a little bit too controversial. I've heard the Reverend Jeremiah Wright preach many different times, and he definitely has audacity. He definitely has chutzpah. And here's what he said in that sermon that inspired that book. He said, "It is easy to hope when there is evidence all around you of how good God is, but to have the audacity to hope when that love is not evident and it's not clear that there will ever be a better tomorrow. That is the true test of faith. That is the audacity of hope." Well, I would argue that we not only need the audacity of hope, we need the shameless audacity of hope. And during this time of year when a lot of attention goes to Christmas, so all too often the lights of the Hanukkah menorah get blared away by the Christmas decorations on public display in many different places, and the Christmas lights that are all around. Too often, the festival of Hanukkah gets ignored. So during this season, when all too much attention goes to another holiday, and people are saying we need to put the Christ back into Christmas, just focusing on that one holiday only, let's send a message that we love our neighbors of all faiths. And let's use this season to put the Chutzpah back into Hanukkah.
As we prepare to kindle the Hanukkah flames this evening, let's remember the Hanukkah story shines with power of hope and possibility. As the story relates, amid the rubble of the desecrated temple, a tiny drop of oil was found. The drop of oil was lit, not knowing what would be, and it burned brighter and longer than anyone thought possible. Hanukkah encourages us to lift up the light, even when so much lies in ruin. Hanukkah calls us to act, even as we do not know if our actions will bring the results we long for. Hanukkah declares, do not get stuck in despair. Remember, a small act can bring about great blessing. Hanukkah says, act for the sake of the sacred. Act with reverence and love. Miracles abound, and so much is possible. May this season open the way to great healing through kindness, compassion, and love.
Let people living in all lands declare that fear and pain are gone. Rise above differences and stand in love and understanding one.
As you log off your computers and go out into the world, I invite you to reach out to someone, either a member of the church or a person of another faith. Do something to bridge the distance between each other during this time of social isolation. Go in peace.
אלוהי נצור לא שונים מידע ושפתי מדבר מימה ואם קל אלי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי 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 נצור לא שונים מידע ושפתי מדבר מימה ואם קל אלי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי 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 נצור לא שונים מידע ושפתי מדבר